There we go. Good job. We love our youth. Don't we love our youth? Yeah. And we love our kids as well. But yes, thanks for the wave. We are going to go out to Genesis, the kids, right now. So you're going that way. If you are younger than primary age, you are going out that door to creche, to our, we're calling it olive shoots, which is a great name. And youth, yes, you are going out this way. Good job. And while they go out, just let's do that thing that we do because it's so good to do. Go and say hello to someone that you haven't said hello to for a moment. Say hi. Introduce yourself if you don't know their name yet. Might still forget.
Takes me a minute to recover.
Okay. Let's come back. All of those amazing conversations that you just started, you can finish later. I just want to, before I start, just reiterate baptisms. How exciting that we're going to have people baptized. I think we've got at least 6 people getting baptized at the end of June, so that is super excited. And if you haven't been baptized, but you have made that commitment to say yes to follow Jesus, then there is an invitation from the Lord to make baptism your next step. And so, as Alex said, that for each of us that have been baptized, it's just that amazing moment where it's like I've made that internal decision, but it comes an external declaration to the world of like, this is, I'm drawing the line, this is where I'm at, and this is what I'm stepping into. And there's something powerful spiritually about doing that publicly. It's not something magic happens, but there is something in the spirit that happens when you step into that place and say, this is where I'm at. So I really encourage you, if you haven't been baptized, to do that. And there's a kind of thing to sign up at the front there, but by the door. I don't know why I'm stumbling over that, but there we are. It's because I'm thinking of something and saying something else at the same time. But anyway, here we are. It's Father's Day. Stand up if you're a father, like in the physical today. Guys, can we celebrate these fathers? We are so grateful for you as fathers in this church. You can sit down. We'll pray for you later. I know that many of you may not be physical fathers, but you are spiritual fathers in this church, and we value and we honor each one of you today, and we're probably going to we're going to talk a little bit about fathers today, and I'm not going to do that thing that I try and balance it out and make everyone else included. Like, there's times where you just focus on something because it's good to focus on it, okay? And actually, I'm going to talk to fathers today, but there's something about leaning into a message, even if you're like, oh, I'm not a father, because actually it teaches you how to position yourself under a father or with a father. It teaches you how to pray for fathers. It teaches you all kinds of things about this journey. So don't switch off if you're like, oh, that's not me today. I can go on my phone for the rest of the service. No, you can't. It's really important. And I'm also aware that Father's Day, like when we had Mother's Day a little while ago, Father's Day these days that we celebrate also have that twinge of something as well for many of us, don't they? Because we live in a world that's not perfect, and we live in the reality of, for some of us, our father journey has been a painful one. Or it's been one that we wish was different, one that we could rewrite, one that we're still praying for, maybe, one that we're still journeying with healing out of. And so I want to recognize today that sometimes we come to these places and it's like, there's a gratefulness, but there's a pain. And I really encourage you in these moments, okay? Sometimes in the kindness of God, he presses on things that are not to run away from there, to have an invitation to be like, God, what's my next stage of healing on that journey? There's two things you can do with pain. One is cover it up, and one is run at it and say, God, I want to be the most full and free version that you paid for of who I am. And so where there's like, you press on something and it hurts, it's like, oh, God, where's my next stage in that journey? Okay, so in those places, we actually say, thanks, God, that you're in your kindness moving us on in our journey. And so take a moment today, if that's you, to sit with the Lord and be like, God, what are you saying to me today? Okay, does that sound good? I remember a moment with my own dad before he left this world to go to heaven, which was probably about 3 years ago now. I remember we were living in America at the time, and I came home to visit him. We weren't to know that, but it was actually the week that he died. And he was in his final days. He knew that he was dying, and I remember sitting with him, and he didn't say many words at this time. He didn't have much ability to talk, and he could just lift his head enough every now and again to kind of glance at you, and he still had the kind of glint in his eye which made him him. Every now and again he'd have that, and there was a moment where I sat with him and I was holding his hand. And he just lifted his head and he looked at me and he said, Hannah, you're a good girl. Hannah, you're a good girl. And, that was a moment for me. Like, we'd had a journey, and sometimes differences and sometimes a clash of opinions and thoughts. But that moment when he spoke those words over my life, it did something. That switched something in my heart, that my whole process of grieving looked different because of that one phrase that he said to me, Hannah, you're a good girl. And I remember another moment that changed me, where life, those moments where you're like, life is hard right now. Like, I feel a little bit like I'm dying inside. There's things that feel really big on the outside. I feel super hopeless, super weak, and I can't see what the future looks like. And I remember one of those moments, and I remember a spiritual father of mine catching me at a super messy moment, when you're like, oh, and he bumped into me, and it was like, and he looked at me and he said, Hannah, you are okay. He didn't try and solve anything at that moment. He didn't try and give me a whole load of advice. He looked at me and he said, Hannah, you are okay. Now, I knew the father that was talking to me at that point, and I knew that they weren't just words for him. Like that, you are okay, came from an absolute and firm belief in the God that was walking with me in that moment. He was like, in the light of what we believe, I'm believing right now, in the mess, in the trial, in the whatever's going on, you are okay. Not you're going to be okay, not you were okay, but I believe that you have everything you need right now. You are okay. It changed me. Changed me in that moment. Every now and again, I'm like, oh, I'm dying. And I'm like, Hannah, you are okay. You have everything you need. That moment marked me, changed me. I remember another moment where I was in ministry school and I was standing next to a friend of mine who was a 19-year-old, kind of slightly awkward, lanky guy from, I can't remember where he was, somewhere in Europe. And he just kind of like had this funny moment, and he looked at me and he said, Hannah, I just had this moment where I felt like I was your dad. I was like, oh, right, okay. I was like in my late 30s at the time, so it was like, cool. How was that for you? Anyway, he turned for me and he said, I just felt to tell you, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And again, it was another moment that hit my heart in a way that I'm like, oh, I didn't really realize how much I needed to hear in that moment that he was proud of me. You know, there are many earthly moments that crack for us heavenly moments. There are moments with earthly fathers that I've had that have cracked something of the father heart of God for my life. And those were 3 of them. And there's things I couldn't have accessed before of the Father's love had those physical moments not happened of physical fathers. Does that make sense? We need fathers. There's something about fathers that we need. Fathers that speak into our lives. Fathers that, that cover. Fathers that care. You know, sometimes I preach here and I always feel a little bit vulnerable after preaching. And often, someone's had a lollipop when they've been preaching. Often I go and stand by the door to say goodbye to people. And you think that's why I stand by the door. And I do. I like to say goodbye to each other. Those of you who walk out that door, some of you hide, but some of you do. Anyway, but by that door as well stands Mike. Mike often stands at the door. Is Mike here today? Mike often stands at their door. And do you know what? When I feel vulnerable, when I feel tender, when I go and stand, he doesn't know this, but when I go and stand by Mike, I'm so covered in that place where I've just been vulnerable and given myself and cried on stage and all of that kind of thing. And I stand by a father figure in this house that covers me. Someone who carries safety. Someone who always has an encouraging word for me when I walk up there. He always says, Hannah, that's so good. Well done, Hannah. And it's just like, And I, at 40 whatever years old, I need a father. My earthly father has been promoted to heaven. I need father figures in my life to cover me, care for me, encourage me. You know, in our lifetime, we have witnessed kind of this deep cultural shift in what fathering and our value for fathering looks like. Some of them are blatant. You know, a woman can choose to have a baby now without the father present. She can go and conceive without a father being in the picture whatsoever. That's significant for our valuing of fatherhood. Some of it's blatant. Some of it is more subtle, like in the media. Okay, way back when, your picture of a father would be someone like Charles Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie. I will die for my children. I will do anything for my children. I will fight the bear. I'll do all this. I will do what. That was the father figure. Yet subtly, we've moved the father figure to a kind of slightly Homer Simpson type father who sits on the couch and is the butt of everybody's jokes. Someone that you roll your eyes at and don't take seriously. And if you look at the sitcoms in this day and age, the majority of them have a low value for fathers. They ridicule fathers, or the father's the butt of the joke, and that kind of thing. It's subtle, but it's there. It's subtle, but it's there. And there's moments where I've caught some of my children kind of having a little bit of an attitude, and I'm like, where's that come from? And then I'll watch the series that they've been watching, and I'm like, oh, there's that attitude right there. There's that attitude right there. It's subtle, some of it, and some of it's blatant. Women's rights has had an incredible, good influence on our society. It's brought a value for women. It's brought, all kinds of things that have been good. But often with these things, when the pendulum starts swinging back to this central place, it carries on. And then we pendulum swing over to the other side, and now masculinity is confused. Masculinity is like, I'm not sure how to bring myself as a man anymore. I'm not quite sure what the right, because the pendulum swing has come over to the other side. And so, we're slightly confused with how we should be. And, that once strong kind of leadership, sacrificial responsibility of a father kind of has kind of been outdated, or it's not healthy, or, there's things there that are difficult. And, in the need to raise one voice, we've silenced another. In raising the rights of women, there's another one been diminished. Let me tell you some statistics. It's going to get better, guys, all right? Listen, sometimes we've got to go low before we go high. I'm just warning you, we're going to get there, okay? But here's some statistics, all right? There are 3.2 million lone parent families in the UK. 85% of them are led by single mums. 85%. 53% of women who have abortions say that their partner was the main reason for it, was the motivation for their decision. Their partners, whether their partners supported them or not. 76% of young people in custody in England and Wales come from father-absent homes. 76%. And that's not even talking about fathers who are physically present and emotionally absent. And then only 39% of fathers feel like they're doing a very good job. Just 39% of fathers think they're doing a very good job. Happy Father's Day. Listen, they aren't just the statistics, they are a sobering reminder of what happens when we devalue something that God has given us. And we are facing a generational crisis of identity, of belonging, and of emotional security. And some of this has to play in that. Our generation is in desperate need of fathers. Fathers, not just that are earthly fathers, but fathers that reveal the father heart of God. Fathers that reveal the father heart of God. You know, we can listen to this and be like, wow, I feel totally overwhelmed right now. I'm really glad I came to church this morning. We've just praised the Lord and kind of like, yes, now we've come crashing down. No, listen, we can be aware of statistics, all right? We have a right to be concerned. We have a right to be alarmed, but we don't bury our head in the sand and kind of pretend that everything's okay as a church. We get to be family, which means we get to care and support for our single parents in our church. We get to be care for our families outside of church and be aware of that. We get to be aware. We get to pray. We get to be practical. Love your single parent neighbors. Love those at the school gate who are single parents. However, we do not follow a God of statistics. Amen? We do not follow a God of statistics. We follow a God of a supernatural story. So if you're sitting here as a single mum this morning and you're like, that sucks, you don't follow a God of statistics. You follow a God of the supernatural. Your story does not have to follow the statistical truths of what's happening in the world right now. In fact, God can do far greater, it says in Ephesians 4, than what we could even ask or imagine. So whatever you're imagining for your family right now, whatever you're imagining for your children, whatever you're imagining for your church, I want you to take it to a higher, that God wants to do way more than what you can ask or imagine. And so we get to have great hope for our story. Psalm 23 says this, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. What does that mean? It means the Lord's your shepherd. You shall not want. He will meet you right in the middle of every lack that you have in your life, and he promises to fill it with his presence. Whether it's your loneliness, whether it's your brokenness, whether it's your hardship, whatever this imperfect world cannot deliver for you, he will give to you in his presence. There is no lack. He fills it. Just close your eyes for a minute, and wherever in that conversation you feel a lack right now, I just want to pray for you and declare over your life, there is no lack. And I pray that the presence of God will come and fill you with his love, with his joy, with his hope, with his peace right now. You know, this problem that we talk about this morning, it's not a new problem. It's not a new problem. From the beginning of time, the enemy's plan is to distort. We've talked about this a number of times. The enemy's plan is to distort and disfigure what God made as good. All right? And this is just another place where he just likes to distort things and destroy what God made for good. But what we also keep talking about is the fact that God's plan from the beginning of time, even before it went wrong, was to make it right again. That's what his plan is. That's what his purpose is. That's what his heart is. You know, in Malachi 4, verse 6, it says this. It says, and he will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their families, to their fathers. You know, right back then, before the beginning of the New Testament, he was prophesied. There was this prophecy of God turning the hearts of the fathers back to the children. Why? Because the hearts of the fathers were away from the children and the children were away from the fathers. It happened back then. It's happening right now. What's interesting there is that he there was not talking about God. It's actually, not that he. The voice there was not God speaking. It was a prophetic. It was a prophetic man that God was raising up to speak life over the people. And that's what we get to do as we are here right now looking at the problem. We get to be the prophetic voice over this culture, over our society. God's heart hasn't changed. We can say that. We can declare that over our families, over our society, over our journeys. God, I believe that you are turning the hearts of the fathers back to the children and the hearts of the children back to the fathers. There is hope for the families in this generation. Our children will prosper and they will walk in the ways of the Lord. Let's declare these truths over our families. Let's believe that what he wanted to do then, he wants to do right now too. Psalm 68 verse 5 says, he is the father of the fatherless. He is the father of the fatherless. But the question I want to ask this morning, okay, is what does it look like to return back to that kind of like the biblical values of heaven for something that the earth has distorted? How do we get back to that kind of valuing fathers? And how do fathers position themselves to live displaying the father heart of God? So I just want to touch on a few things super practically this morning on how to do that. And, a father is someone that calls forth identity. Like those stories that I was talking about at the beginning of my journey, there were moments where someone called forth something in me and spoke life over my journey. Whether it was my physical father, whether it was my spiritual father, or whether it was a 19-year-old boy who just happened at one point to hear God's voice over my life. Each one of them was a moment where a father heart was there to speak into me what God was saying. That means we're all in, right? That means there's none of us that is outside of that, because each one of us can do that. So it's all hands on deck, right? The natural fathers, the spiritual fathers, those who have moments where they hear the Father's heart of God. Because we all carry influence, right? We all, there is that ability to hear the voice of God. It's not just the person on the stage. It's not just the prophet. We're all able to hear the voice of God for each other. So it might be that there's a moment like that 9-year-old boy where you're like, this is weird. And it's like, no, go for it. It changed my life, that moment where he stepped out awkwardly. So, let's embrace that. The Apostle Paul was quite probably one of the most incredible spiritual fathers when you look at the Bible. When you look at the Apostle Paul, you see a father that deeply, deeply cares for the people that he's interacting with. And, if you remember, Paul was a moment that at one point he was going about his own life, really kind of like dynamically oppressing those who were Christians. And then he had an encounter with God. He had an encounter with God and everything changed. Everything about his life changed. And his mission from that moment on was to help others walk in the light that he had encountered on that road one day when everything changed. And, he visited the very early churches. He would go around and he would kind of step in and father them. And then in moments when he couldn't get to them, he'd write to them. And that's where we get the Romans and we get Corinthians, all of those little letters. Most of them are Paul fathering the early church, fathering them, guiding them. And, you can tell he's fathering them because of the way he speaks to them. He opens up his letters of like, I've been praying for you. Like, I've been thinking about you. My heart's with you. Even if I can't get to you, my heart's with you. And then he's like, look at what you're doing really good. This is amazing. And you see these moments where he encourages them when he's like, don't stop doing this. This is amazing. This is great. And you see him kind of like championing them from afar. And then you have moments where he shares his own journey. It's like, man, this is hard for me right now. This is what I'm wrestling with. This is my journey. So he lets them in to who he is. And then there's moments where they need correction or they need kind of just a little bit of kind of, he redefines truth for them and brings them back into line. But he always does it tenderly and kindly, firmly, but affirming and saying, hey, this is where you need to change. But I believe in you. You can do this. You're amazing. You know, one of those early churches that he wrote to was Corinth. You have 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. And, Corinth was this wealthy, status-driven port city. It was like one of those goods. It's probably like a San Francisco, maybe, of the early days. You know, it was the place to be. It was where all the moving and the shaking went. And it was diverse. It was influential. But it was spiritually challenging. So he's writing to this church that's right in the middle of all of that. And they struggle in Corinth with two things. They struggle with status. Like status is really important to them there. And they struggle with comfort. So they struggle with pride, basically. I need to look good. And they struggle with comfort. I want to avoid pain. Like, those are the two things that they struggle with. And Paul's tackling this in 1 Corinthians. And in chapter 4, he comes in quite strongly with a few things that he's correcting them about. He's like, this, you got to change. You know, he's quite harsh. And can you imagine if you're quite proud and you want to avoid pain, like someone writing that is just not fun, all right? It's just not what you want to hear. So we have this beautiful moment in verse 14 where Paul comes in and he says this. He says, hey, he says, I don't write these things to make you ashamed, but to admonish you as dearly beloved children. Isn't that beautiful? He's not like, hey, get your stuff together. I've told you this already. You should have worked this out by now. He's like, hey, I'm coming to you not to shame you. Not to shame you. I'm coming as children to invite you into something greater than what you know for yourselves. You know, fathers correct with love and connection. Is my first point. I've got 4 points. Fathers correct with love and connection. My source of how I live, giving, correcting, growing other people, I do it with love and connection. How do I do that? Well, first, I need to be full of God's love, right? I cannot love from being an empty vessel. It's really hard to love without God's love. It's really hard to love without God's love. And sometimes when we struggle to love our children, we struggle to do the right thing, we just step back in and, God, would you show me how much you've loved me so that I can pass that on to those around me. As fathers, your source of love gets to be the love of God for you. It's an endless source. You can step into it any time. Step back into the presence of God. Oh, I get to love what's in front of me with your love, God. I get to do it from loving God, and then I get to do it from loving myself. It says the greatest commandment is love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. If I don't love me, I don't love my children fully. What does that mean? That doesn't mean that I'm like, I love me. It's like this deep revelation of God's love for me makes me love me. Well, if God loves me like that, with all my faults, with all my journey, with all my stuff, I can love me. And therefore, I have grace for you and love you with your journey, all your things. Does that make sense? Your weight of your correction is as powerful as your love and your connection with them. The more your connection, the more your correction will do what it's meant to do when you do it in connection. Number 2, verse 15 says this, "For though you have countless guides in Christ, you do not have many fathers. For I became a father in Jesus Christ to you." You have 1,000 teachers, but not many fathers. It's so easy to teach and instruct your children. It's another thing to father them. In this church, it would be so easy to just teach, instruct, but to father comes from a different motivation. You know, a father's motivation is to call identity and purpose out of the people in front of me. That's the motivation of why we do what we do. And it's interesting, those two issues that the Corinthians were dealing with would be an obstacle for them being true fathers. You know, we can father or we can parent or we can guide out of pride so easily. Have you ever said that thing? Hey, be on your best behavior today. When we go out today, can you be on your best behavior? Why do you say that? Often it's because I don't want you to make me look bad. I will parent you so that I look good. You know, the interesting, we had a time in America where we had people living with us all the time, kind of students. And it did us so good because we had to learn this thing of actually who we are at home actually looks the same as who we are when we're out, because we've got people at home who, you know how you kind of like let it all hang out at home? When you're doing that, you're teaching your children to perform, and you're teaching your children, hey, you know, I don't really care what you look like at home, but when other people are watching, I want you to look good, so and it's all about me and it's not about you. We can do that in the church. We want to look good. Hey, can you just conform, please? It doesn't make us look very good. Hey, when people come in from outside, we're going to look messy. It's going to look messy in here. When people haven't got their things sorted out and they're not doing what we want them to do, we can instruct and guide because we want to look good, or we can take our time and we can father. And we can be like, it doesn't matter that it looks messy. It doesn't matter that these people over here don't understand what's going on with you. If I'm fathering, it won't matter. When I'm out and my child has a meltdown for something and the other people who are walking by don't understand, that's not going to matter to me when I know the heart of my child. So pride, and then the other one is comfort. That's another motivation for why we parent, right? Sometimes we can get to that moment and a child can be going on and on and on, and then it's like, stop. Why? Because you're frustrating me, because you're taking up my time, because you're it's like there's a discomfort to me, so I parent because there's a discomfort to me. Or you're pressing. Often there can be that thing as well of like you're pressing on my pain when you do that. Sometimes there can be journey of do you ever have this moment where you see something in your children that you struggle with and you're like, oh, I don't like that. I'm going to let's get rid of that. And it's actually, I'm processing my own pain through dealing with you. And the invitation is to actually just step back into my own journey and be like, wow, what does that look like for me? Where's wholeness for me there? Love sees the heart and is prepared to be inconvenienced for the sake of the journey. It's number 2. Okay, number 3. It says this. This is an amazing phrase to say, what Paul says here. He says, I urge you then, be imitators of me. Be imitators of me. Fathers are worthy of imitation. Fathers are worthy of imitation. You might say to that, like, oh, wow, no, please don't. Do what I say, but please don't do what I do. That's what we can say sometimes, isn't it? Do what I say, but please don't do what I do. fathers are worthy of imitation. Did that mean that Paul had everything sorted out, that he was like the perfect person, so that he was like, hey, do what I do, I get everything right? I don't think it was. He says it over and over again, do as I do. Paul was a man who was absolutely aware that where he was by the grace of God. I am where I am because of God's kindness and his grace and his goodness. When I fall down, I get up again because of God's grace and God's journey. You know, when you're saying be imitators of me, it's not I'm going to get everything right so you can copy me. It's like I'm going to demonstrate for you what failure looks like. When I fall and I get up again, I'm going to show you what it looks like to come and repent before the Lord. I'm going to show you what it looks like to restore relationship. I'm going to show you what it looks like to walk in this place, in this imperfect world where I get triggered and I don't get it right and I react in the wrong way sometimes. Imitate me because I will show you how to do that journey. Does that make sense? You know, we live in a culture where, I don't know about you, but my parents never argued in front of me. It just was not what you did. You argued and that, you know. So when we got married, it happens very rarely, doesn't it, darling? But when we argued, it was like, oh no, like what's happening? Like why, you know, everything's going wrong. We're having a disagreement. I would have loved my parents to argue in front of me. Because I grew up so afraid of conflict, because I never saw it modeled in a way that it's like, hey, we disagree. This is how we interact. We might not get that right, but when we don't get that right, we'll come low and we'll apologize to each other and we'll be humble and we'll walk through this and we'll bring it before the Lord and we'll, you know, all of those kind of things. You know, when we don't give an opportunity to imitate, then actually we are setting our children, we are setting those who are watching us up for a standard that's not real and not able to be kept. So I'd encourage you, you know, of course there are times where you need to have conversations behind doors. I'm not saying like, hey everyone, we're having an argument, would you all like to sit around and listen? I don't mean that. But what I do mean is be real and don't fake it. Like your kids know when there's an atmosphere in the room, when you've just, you know, whether you think you do or not, you're like, there's something awkward going on here. Anyway, but you know, model these things. Model what it looks like to pull on the grace of God. Model what it looks like to apologize to your children when you didn't get it right. Model what it looks like I remember times where I you know, I'd say to my kids, I just need you to pray for me today because I'm feeling really weak today. And I know God's my strength. I know that he's not going to let me down. I know that I'm not alone, but I need you to pray for me. And what I'm saying in that is imitate me. Yeah. This is what you do when you feel like that. So I just want to release over this room a whole new way of imitating to each other what it looks like to journey with God. Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. Follow me as I follow Christ. And for those of you who struggle because you feel like you've disqualified yourself from being a voice into the life of others, your voice is as much a voice in your struggle as it is in your victory. It is as much in your struggle as it is in your victory. And we walk this out together. You know how relieving it is sometimes to have a journey and have a problem and someone else to come in and be like, hey, I've been through that. This is my journey. It's like imitate me. It's like, oh, there's people who've gone before me who know what it's like. And that's amazing. And then lastly, it says in verse 17, that is why I sent Timothy, my beloved and faithful child in the Lord, to remind you of my ways in Christ, as I teach them everywhere in the church. You know, it must have been amazing for him to kind of like send Timothy off and be like, that's my boy. I've taught him everything he knows. I totally trust him, and he's going to tell you how to do it. Isn't that awesome? Yeah. Do you know that's the aim for our children? That's the aim, that we create. We create legacy. That what we have instilled in them goes on from generation to generation to generation. When you read, I was reading Joshua the other day. It wasn't Joshua, it was Judges. But just after Joshua kind of left he had this incredible journey where he led the children of Israel to claim the promised land and all of that kind of thing. And he went on his journey, and then he died. And the next generation followed the Lord. And then after that, it stopped. And there was this failure for that generation to carry it on to the next. Something was missing in that journey that failed. And then it says, and then they could turn to other gods, and they do. It's like, what does it look like to bring legacy for our children? I tell you this, it's longer than you want to sometimes. If you want to leave legacy, sow time into your children. Sow attention into your children. Be intentional about sorting out your own baggage so that your children's legacy is not your own journey of going around the same mountains. Let it interrupt your day. Let legacy, every time we have these moments when you have teenagers, sometimes it just gets to bedtime and you're like, oh, this is amazing. And then someone comes and sits on your bed and they say, Mom, can we talk? And you're like, oh, any other time of the day. Like, I just so want to go to bed right now. But if I can think legacy, then I will make time for my children when it interrupts me. In this church, if we can think legacy, then we'll be able to disrupt program and pause things here for bigger things than just getting the job done. I remember moments in ministry school where I was a pastor and I used to have like about 60 students, and I used to lead groups with them, and there were moments in those meetings where God would be touching one person, and the focus would be something about that one person. And sometimes everyone else would be a bit twitchy of like, why are we focused, So if I can think legacy, then everyone else can pause and we can invest in that one person's journey with God, and it's okay. Because I'm not thinking masses, I'm thinking legacy. Legacy, one by one by one. The legacy is not just what we do, is what we raise up while we're doing it. So in that thing, I would say this: who are you investing in this place? Obviously, we have moments in our own journeys. We have moments in our workplace. We have moments in our families. We have moments in our church. But who are you investing in intentionally where you're leaving legacy? Where are you pausing for the nudges of the Lord? Because he says, hey, pause for a moment. This one's bigger than getting everything done. Who's learning Jesus through you? Who's learning Jesus through you? So this morning, I just want to encourage you. I really felt like there was a moment of particularly men rising up to that yes of like, there's something that the Lord's inviting me to that's bigger than what I'm living for right now. Maybe it's that your wings have been clipped in some way through the journey and God's inviting you to something fuller. So if you're a man, I'd love you to stand up. You know, when we look at Jesus, Jesus said those words, didn't he? If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Paul was a good demonstration of the Father, but Jesus was the perfect representation of the Father. And there's a moment when you watch Jesus handle his disciples, and he handles them like a father does. And one of the ones that always captures my attention is Peter, and how Jesus deals with Peter. Like, Peter's a lot, right? Peter's a lot, and Peter's frontal lobe hasn't grown properly yet, and so he thinks before he does, and he's all in. And there's moments when Peter's moving along in his journey where he's just impulsive, and he's the one that says, "You are the Lord. You're the Christ. You're the Son of the living God. I don't care who else says it. I see who you are, Jesus." He's the one when on the boat and they see Jesus, he gets out and he's like, "Yes, I'm going." And then he's like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening?" And Jesus has to rescue him. He's the one, I think, that when they're washing the feet, he says, "Gosh, God, Jesus, wash all of me, like not just my feet." And Jesus is like, "Jesus, no, Peter, just your feet will be fine. Feet will be fine." And Peter's the one that chops off the ear of the guard when he's coming to take Jesus away. Peter's the one that is so confused at the crucifixion that when they say, don't you know Jesus? He's like, no, I don't. And after that moment, we find him. After the crucifixion, after the resurrection, it says we find him out on a boat, fishing, doing what he did before he met Jesus. And he's fishing and he hasn't caught any fish. And Jesus comes to the shore. Jesus comes to the shore, and if you were Jesus and you'd sown into the disciples that much and you'd watched the journey, like, there must be some frustration of like, "Peter, you could have got it. Like, Peter, after all that I've sown into you, Peter, after all of the investment, after all, you still didn't get it and you got it wrong." But he doesn't. He comes to Peter. He stands at the shore and he's like, hey, Peter. How's that fishing going for you? How's that fishing going for you? And Peter this time, he doesn't try and walk on water. He just gets out the boat anyway. And he jumps in. And he swims to the shore. Because he knows that he needs to be with Jesus. Some of us, and I'm talking to you men right now, but sometimes we've done all the stuff for Jesus. We've declared who he is. We've tried to walk on water. We've done all these things, but it hasn't gone right. And so we've just distanced ourselves and we just go out on a boat fishing. Because to believe that Jesus wants to change our lives and do great things for us, just feels like too much. And I believe today that he's inviting you to the shore again. That he's inviting you to sit around the fire. Last time he met Jesus, he looked across the fire of his failure and he met Jesus' eyes when the cock crowed 3 times. So Jesus invites him back to a fire again. And he looks across at him as a fire. And he says to him, "Peter, do you love me? Peter, do you love me? Peter, do you love me?" Do you know what he was doing at that point? He was saying, Peter, you might see all the mess of how you've made things, but I see your heart, Peter, and your heart is good. You love me, Peter. You're looking at your love by all these things that have outplayed that you haven't got right, but I see your heart, and I see that you love me, Peter. Will you build my church? Will you step back into the game? Will you actually believe that I'm bigger than your failure, bigger than your insecurity, bigger than your disappointment, bigger than all of these things? And will you come back in the game with me, Peter? Because you are called to follow me. You are called to be the rock on which I build my church. Are you in? Are you in? And I believe there are men in this room that have stepped back into the boat and gone fishing because they feel like they haven't got it right. And God is looking, Jesus is looking into your heart, and he says, I see the love that you have for me, and I'm proud of you. I see you, and I'm proud of you. I see you. And you're okay in your journey, with your faults, with the things you don't get right. You are okay. I want to partner with you in your family as you rise up to be the father that I'm inviting you to be. You are okay as you are. Keep walking with me. Keep encountering my love. But believe that you are enough to father your children in the ways of God. I got you a Father's Day gift today. I bought each of you a lion bar because I feel that there's an invitation to rise up as men today into all that God has for you. There's an invitation to let the roar out of who God made you to be, the influence that you are called to. And so I'm going to give you a gift today, and I'm going to leave them here. But what I want you to do is, I don't want you to eat it now. I know that's going to be hard for some of you. I don't want you to give it to your children. I want you to go away somewhere at some point and find some quiet time and eat it with the Lord. Eat it with the Lord. And say, God, what are you inviting me into in this season? Just take some time away. And so these are here, and I invite you to come up the front and get one as we go back into worship today. And in that, you might take a minute down the front and renew that yes to the Lord again tonight, today. There'll be a prayer team over at that side there if you need any extra prayer. But sometimes we just need to get with Jesus, not with anyone else. Just get with Jesus and allow him to work in our hearts. So let's everyone stand. We're going to go back into worship.